Hey, Seth, it's April, if you can hear me.
Yes. Yes, perfect.
Excellent. All right.
Would you like to try sharing your slides? One of the things we found in the past is sometimes there's a delay in clicking on the slides, so I'd just like to check that out before we get started.
How's that look?
Looks great. Okay, changed. Okay, you doesn't look like you're having any problems.
They're all small.
So far, there's only been one person who's had problems, and that was actually Carolyn. I think there's something about the Iowa State connection.
Things just move more slowly in Iowa.
Okay, let's see. So I got this recording.
Oh, wait a minute. Hang on. I'm going to stop sharing for a second.
I gotta say, you have the coolest background of any. Looks like the future back there.
Oh, yes, indeed.
So before we get started, we still have a minute or two, but one of the things I didn't put on here is for you to talk a little bit about your current position and what you're up to and what goes on there. So that might be nice for a couple of people who are joining if you could give a little background.
Throw a slide in real quick?
Oh, do you have a slide on it?
Sure.
Oh, sure.
Well, let me, 1 minute to go. Make the intro long.
So you're looking for a different slide right now?
Yeah, I got it. I actually just put the sharing on pause.
Ah.
So you're looking at, hopefully you're looking at the same thing.
I didn't know you could do that.
I just learned that myself. Yeah. Format. Yeah, I'm working away. Here we go. Keep source formatting. Hey.
Well, maybe while you're finishing up, I'll do introductions real quick, and then you can just jump to that slide either at the beginning or the end.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So yeah, it is time. So thanks for joining us for the 8th seminar in the Plant Phenome Journal Monthly Webinar Series. My name is Seth Murray. I'm an associate professor at Texas A&M and the editor of the Plant Phenome Journal. Today, April Agee Carroll, did I say that correctly?
It's Agee.
Agee. Discusses the North American Plant Phenotyping Network that she chairs. Carolyn Lawrence, who's also an editor with TPPJ, is a co-chair of NAPPN, and she's online as well. And I haven't seen any of the other members yet of NAPPN, but they may be joining us. So you can watch past webinars from our TPPJ on our new YouTube channel. So if you just search the Plant Phenome Journal or at the TPPJ website, and you can read about some cutting-edge work going on in plant phenomics. So Dr. Carroll is chair of the North American Plant Phenotyping Network, or NAPPN. She's vice president of the research and development at Aero Farms, and she's an adjunct faculty of horticulture at Purdue, where she was formerly the director of Phenomics. She previously worked at DuPont Pioneer. She did a postdoc and PhD at UC Riverside in plant cell biology and molecular biology and genetics, and she got her BS from California State University in Fullerton. And so today she's going to be speaking about the North American Plant Phenotyping Network, developing a regional association to enable international excellence in phenomics research, and maybe she'll also talk a little bit about her job at Aero Farms, because that's pretty cool too.
Great. Thank you so much, Seth, and thank you for the opportunity here to speak to the group today. big fan of the seminar series here. Lots of interesting stuff coming up, and really just looking forward to connecting with more folks and encouraging more people to join our organization, the North American Plant Phenotyping Network. So we'll talk today a bit about the history of the organization. It's it kind of arose convergently in several different locations, which I think really speaks well to the need across the North American region for us to organize ourselves as a leader in phenotyping. And so the synergy here, and this was actually a slide I believe that you made, Steph, is that right? And it's really talking about how NAPPN can bring value to existing organizations. We didn't want to start up a new organization that was going to have, an entirely new foundation. There were already lots of organizations that wanted to include phenomics, but that really couldn't do it inclusively of really disparate disciplines like engineering and data science, although all of the societies that we've talked with and worked with have been more than happy and very welcoming of these different disciplines. So we're really trying to exist to bridge the other disciplines across different scientific societies. So our parent organization, the International Plant Phenotyping Network, has the same vision. But here in North America, we're looking to bridge across groups that are so different, looking at American Society of Plant Biology, all the way across to the engineers, the tri-societies, NAP, plant breeding, as well as having things, that like Geophysical Union, computer science, statistics, data science, and really wanting to get representation from all of those disciplines. So we're the only organization here in North America with the exclusive focus on plant phenotyping. And so this is complementary to the Phenome meeting that many of you may have attended in February in Tucson, as well as this venue here, the Plant Phenome Journal. So we really want to be able to be an advocate to industry, to funding agencies, policymakers, and philanthropists, and having kind of that cross-functional emphasis as well. So we want to coordinate activities, so not just to be kind of an organization for organization's sake. We want to really emphasize best practices around not just data collection, but also data management. So how can we reuse data? How can we get the most value out of our data and really utilize these data sets? And we also want to be an access point for sorry, I'm getting an echo stuff. If folks could, on the line, if everyone could mute if you're not speaking, that would be great.
Yeah, I'm getting an echo too, but I'm not finding anybody to mute. So
okay.
It might be a WebEx problem this time. Yep.
Okay, it's just a little bit here and there. I'll try to work through it. Okay, so really wanting to not be the data repository in and of itself, which can be maybe expensive and hard to secure funding for, although we're certainly open to that option, but we want to be an access point to other long-term data repositories. So within the organization, let's see if my slide will change. I want to just acknowledge the executive board here for the North American Plant Phenotyping Network. We decided that with 3-year terms, we would rotate the number of years that a person on the executive board would serve. So for our inaugural board, after this election, everyone will just be elected to a 3-year term. But we have 7 board members, and we needed to make sure that we weren't just completely re-electing the board every 3 years, so we've staggered the terms. I have a 1-year term, and as such was elected to the position of chair. We also have David Ertl from the Iowa Corn. We have Jian Jin from Purdue University representing our engineering disciplines. We have Carolyn Lawrence-Dill representing computational disciplines. Charlie Messina from DuPont Pioneer. Seth Murray from Texas A&M that you have there, and Chris Topp from the Donald Danforth Plant Science Center. And so Chris and Seth represent our biological sciences or plant biology disciplines. So part of the bylaws of the organization were to make sure that we had diverse representation from industry, which would be myself and David Ertl, as well as from academia representing those different disciplines. So the historical perspective was this first meeting in January of 2016, looking at a series of workshops at PAG in 2016. This is where I met Carolyn Lawrence-Dill. and a number of us got together and really decided that we wanted to get something done. But they had already gone out and gotten funding and gotten these workshops through on high throughput plant phenotyping and data analysis. So this was Carolyn, Ruth Bastow, and Catherine Denby. So what came out of this was an advisory white paper, also authored by Nathan Miller and the three that were mentioned on the previous organization, that there was a need for networking and collaboration. So improved communication and opportunities that span the disciplines and that span national and international boundaries. So how can we plug in with the international community better? Interdisciplinary training, and so one of the things that came out of this was a very nice P3 plant predictive phenomics program at Iowa State, training a couple classes now of interdisciplinary scientists around the predictive plant phenomics? It's 2 Ps, I know that, it's very catchy. But it's a wonderful program for these career stages, early and late in the training stages. Data and standards, so best practices, but without inhibiting the science. And then also the reward structure, so having fundamental changes to how we go about looking for funding, how we go about incentivizing people to do the excellent research in this area. Oh, and so the North American Plant Phenotyping Network there, logo there. So, so the next event was August of that same year. And so kind of as a result of the workshops from PAG, we decided that we wanted to have some sort of a network, and we wanted to work with groups that would have, kind of like-minded, wanted to organize. And we also found a source of funding for this, which is very generous from the Foundation for Food and Ag Research. We had a lot of support from John Reich, Sally Rocky, others from that organization, as well as the Iowa Corn Promotion Board, which has been a great supporter of our organization. And then when I was at Purdue University, we also had a good amount of funding that was actually matched by Purdue to be able to leverage the funds from FAR, which requires a one-to-one match from a non-federal source. So we decided to form this ad hoc steering committee, and that was before the inaugural convening event. We had a wonderful scientific meeting, which I'll talk a little bit more about. We cemented our affiliation with the International Plant Phenotyping Network, so we had our keynotes were 2 of the board members from the IPPN, and then we had breakouts on the mission and the vision of the organization, which actually went really well to be able to organize and understand. And I'm guessing that a lot of people that are on this call right now were at that convening event or had some input and some contributions. So I just want to thank everyone who was able to make it to that meeting or who had other kind of feedback at our other meetings, that this really, this organization is all about all of us, and we want to be as accommodating and allow the research to flow as naturally as possible. So that ad hoc steering committee, again, myself and Carolyn ended up holding over into the executive board, but we really had just an incredible amount of energy from the folks on this advisory board. Jennifer Clark, Noah, Malia, Arhelia Lawrence, and Mitch Tynstra, also from Purdue, that were integral in this process early on of getting this conference organized and also drafting the initial bylaws, a lot of the heavy lifting that was done. So I just want to acknowledge this group. Fantastic organization, and every person on this slide still heavily involved with the NAPPN. So from that convening event, we identified some challenges. We looked for things that we could address in the pre-competitive space, but we really wanted to kind of focus on interpreting the phenotypes in context of environmental data. So a lot of that has to do with infrastructure of bringing sensor data, bringing drones, bringing GPS, again, kind of aligning these different disciplines. And looking at standards for the data, so how we can standardize without restricting the science in any way. So these potential kind of pre-competitive areas are really the big focus of the Foundation for Food and Ag Research, so looking across industry and academia, so funding things in the pre-competitive space that industry would be interested in funding, where the industry-wide could be supportive. So things like a central repository for phenotypic data sets that everyone could benefit from. Metadata and data organization standards. Industry could be very interested in funding this type of research and these types of standards. Everyone could use it, but there's not really a competitive space there for gaining a competitive advantage. Controlling, documenting variability. translating these precise measurements to biologically relevant information, kind of the holy grail of phenotyping, and then also looking at the potential for automation and increased throughput as a potential pre-competitive area. So these are some of the big learnings. Some of them will be easier to pursue and more straightforward than others, but this was really what the community said they wanted as a result of this phenotyping convening event at Purdue in August of 2016. So after that conference, and this is data on our membership from January of this year, so this is about a half a year old. I'm sure we have more membership now, but we had 488 members of the NAPPN from 185 organizations. So this is just the U.S. We have a really nice representation. Only a few states are not on this list. So I would encourage anyone that, from Montana, Wyoming, call your friends and tell them that we want to have more researchers join us. Kentucky, West Virginia, all of these organizations, if there are people doing phenotyping, we want them to join. We also want to increase our international presence. We initially started off thinking we wanted to be the American Plant Phenotyping Network. Then we thought more broadly that, we like to be inclusive. There's really great phenomics going on in Mexico and in Canada, and there's no reason not to include these folks, but we need to do a better job of recruiting, let them know that there are resources here and that we do want people to get involved. So our membership also extends beyond just the North American areas. That we do have a sister network in the Latin American Plant Phenotyping Network, and so we haven't fully delineated the territory. I think Mexico and Central America are technically included in both networks. I don't think we're going to have a territorial war. I think with both organizations being so inclusive, everyone's welcome in both groups. So whichever meeting works better with your schedule, everyone's encouraged to attend regardless of membership. We also have really great representation in Europe and in Australia, and then East Asia and India, we're getting more representation as well. So this is really as a venue to encourage people to join into the research cooperative network within North America, as well as the more formal organization of the International Plant Phenotyping Network in Europe, based in Europe, but that's really spanning the entire globe now. And if you need more information about that, there's a great website, plant-phenotyping.org, and Carolyn Lawrence Dill, the co-chair for the NAPPN, is also a co-chair for the International Plant Phenotyping Network, so she can help put that together as well. Okay, so after the convening event, we had this large membership, and we had all these countries represented, all these organizations. So what do? We have an ad hoc board that really didn't have an authority. We didn't have bylaws. We didn't have, really anything other than a whole bunch of people who wanted to work together. And so the next set of goals was to try to put together a more formal structure for our organization. And I just realized we do have an event that we need to promote. So Carolyn or Seth, while you're on the line, if you could just throw a slide up on the International Plant Phenotyping Symposium. I didn't put that into this slide deck, but maybe we could transition to that at the end so that we make sure that gets recorded on the call. So if we have the phenotyping network plugged into the international group, we wanted to kind of model the international group's vision, mission, values, these bylaws, as well as creating an elected executive board that would actually have some decision-making authority. And so this all came about in what we call the General Assembly meeting that arose at the Phenome 2017 meeting. So this wasn't the one that was just this last year in Tucson. It was the one a year and a half ago, the first Phenome meeting. And so NAPPN was a key organizer for that, and we carried out quite a bit of great work at that through the executive board. And one of the big things that we decided was that we were going to have an election and agree to create this executive board. So the vision for the North American Plant Phenotyping Network came out of this first General Assembly meeting. We decided that we wanted the field of phenomics to be so advanced that the tools actually become routine, and that this discipline becomes a turnkey solution similar to, say, microscopy now, that most biologists are trained to use a microscope. There's nice software that can help capture their images and do the pan, tilt, zoom, and contrast and all of those things. And we want phenotypic prediction to become a routine component of biology investigation and development. So that's really our goal. So if we do this right, we will almost put ourselves out of business. But the field of plant phenomics, just like microscopy, just like genomics, will continue on as its own discipline, its own area of scholarship to really kind of push the envelope to the next level of measurement science. And so that's really where our engineers, our modelers, and our data scientists become even more critical to taking us to that next level. Our mission, and this is very similar to the mission of the International Plant Phenotyping Network, with a few modifications that were more specific to our organization. But in alignment with the IPPN, we wanted to accelerate the visibility and impact of the plant phenotyping research. We want to maximize synergies, we want to reduce bottlenecks, and we want collaboration to span disciplines, like I mentioned before. One thing that was unique here that I think the IPPN is moving towards now is this mutually beneficial research between the public and private sectors. We actually, because of our relationship with SPAR and because so many of us working in this field in North America are in industry, we wanted to incentivize this public-private partnership, and I think that's really worked well for the organization. Just to try to figure out the best way to innovate and the best way to fund this type of research. The framework for data standards, data access and sharing that I mentioned, and also increasing our visibility beyond the current research communities. So not just plant scientists, but also in the engineering and data disciplines. And then also facilitating the interdisciplinary training that's necessary to do this type of research at scale. Our values are centered around open communication and celebrating diversity. So we want to have everyone welcome. We want to have all different disciplines being able to come to the table and say, hey, have you thought about this problem this way? I say this often, but that I love working with engineers because they see my showstopper problems as a gift sometimes. That, hey, I just totally at my wit's end of trying to get this camera to acquire, so I'm just going to do it all manually and sit here all day. And then, the next thing I know, somebody's typed up a nice script or, engineered a shutter control device, just all kinds of those types of innovations that I really love working with engineers. So we also want to ensure that we get representation from all ranks and levels of training. So we want students to attend. The Phenome conference has done a great job with providing travel grants and funding for early career scientists and students. And we want to make sure that continues, that our membership isn't just PIs, but also people that are up and coming in this area. So the next, the next event was the Phenome 2018 meeting. So that was just this year, where we formally elected our 7-member executive board. So we had 3 non-academic, 4 academic, and like I mentioned, we had the computational engineering and plant biology. And then we ratified our bylaws. So we, as an ad hoc board, had been working for the last year and a half on the bylaws that came out of the convening event in 2016. And then we decided to adopt Phenome as the annual meeting venue for the NAPPN, at least for the next few years. So we've had really great partnerships with ASPB as the organizers, and then we have great representation of our board on the Phenome organizing committee. So again, it's really worked well, and also kind of synergistically with the IPPN to have their conferences in the fall every other year. So the new directions for this organization. So we'll be focusing on organizational alignment. So really figuring out exactly what we want to do. Do we want to have working groups in specific areas? Do we want to have kind of consortia or alignment groups? What kind of funding opportunities are out there, and what should we be pursuing? And then looking again at the technical challenges. So having that kind of be our guiding principles to understand how to interpret the phenotypes in the context of environmental data. And then, that brings up so many questions around infrastructure, metadata, interpretation. And then, kind of again, along those same lines, to look at standards that don't restrict the science. So getting all of that together. And then looking at the pre-competitive areas that we might work in. That I mentioned before around the data repositories, organization standards, and whatnot. So that's really where we've decided to focus our energies. And as a board, I think our primary direction and discussion has been around possible funding sources. So we're in conversations with the Foundation for Food and Ag Research. Again, they've been a tremendous supporter of us all along from the very beginning. So they do have a dollar for dollar match requirement, though. So we look for non-federal funding sources. So say NSF dollars would not be able to be matched with FAR monies, but monies that we can get from, say, private sources or state sources, university in-kind and cash sources. Could all be potential matching. So we will be talking with FAR on several different angles. Arhelia Lawrence and Carolyn Lawrence Dill are also leading preparation of an NSF proposal for a research coordination network, and looking to other methods for funding as well to be able to move ahead. Okay, so I guess the most important part of this that I'd like for everyone to take away, it's very easy to become a member of the North American Plant Phenotyping Network. It is free to become a member of the North American Plant Phenotyping Network, at least for now. So you can get your foot in on the ground floor. We have a kind of a sub-page of the International Plant Phenotyping Network of the plant-phenotyping.org, but we're nappn.plant-phenotyping.org. And right there under contact, you can become a member. It's just that easy, a little web form. Okay, so we have a lot of sponsors, a lot of host organizations up here that are many to acknowledge. And I would just like to say particularly a thank you to the IPPN as well as to the companies and universities that have been so supportive, as well as the Midwest Big Data Hub for being a great partner organization to help us get the word out about our organization. So with that, Seth had asked me just to talk really briefly about some of the kind of larger scale phenotyping efforts going on with my company at AeroFarms. So if you can see me on the video, we have our production warehouse. Believe it or not, this is the quiet spot in the company to sit and hold a webinar. At AeroFarms, we operate the world's largest indoor vertical farm. We have a good amount of automation coming online, but we also have a lot of measurement of our environment, both in the X, Y, and the Z space of understanding how the plants are being grown, how temperature, how all kinds of different parameters, from all the way down to the fertilizer dosing units to the rooftop units that are heating and cooling. So we're really very proud of this farm, and just to go into a little detail, this is a time-lapse video of a red romaine product growing over a 14-day growth cycle. And so this is just an example. We're partnering with Dell Computers of a promo video here, but looking at how these plants grow and develop over time. And then they're all harvested about 14 days after sowing to generate a nice production yield that goes into local Whole Foods, Fresh Direct, and local grocery store chains here in the New Jersey, New York City metro area. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions about the NAPPN in particular. I can just leave this video spooling, and I see little things that I want to just run right into and fix on the, there's a little loop of growing cloth over there that drives me crazy. But anyway, it's a really cool system to be working in and doing phenotyping. So, all right.
All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Carroll, for your great overview of NAPPN and showing us a little bit about AeroFarms. So we generally just open it up for questions, and so the way that you can ask questions is you can write in the chat function and either address it to everybody or address it to myself, Seth Murray, or April. Or you can unmute and turn down your volume and ask a question after introducing yourself. So while you're getting your questions ready, again, as I always like to do, I'll make a plug for the Plant Phenome Journal, which is an open access society journal dedicated to advancing these issues and supporting organizations like NAPPN that are trying to push the area and discipline forward. I guess with that, I'll ask a brief question regarding sort of standards and technology. So initially in the field phenotyping area, everybody has sort of just worked on their own thing, and different institutions have, from an outsider perspective looking in, you might call it, reinventing the wheel. But I think that can also be really helpful. But now we're starting to see some more coordinated, especially with the RPE projects, of robots and the Iowa Corn Promotion Board of robots, the same robots being deployed throughout the country. And so do you see a role for NAPPN in sort of this helping with those discussions about, reinventing the wheel versus, how do we coordinate, and what would be your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's exactly the type of thing that we want to help facilitate. So we don't want to be dictatorial. We don't want to come in and say, this is the sprayer chassis that everyone has to use. Because, like you said, it has kind of arose very organically in different spots. But now we have the learnings to see, what works really well with platform A versus platform B. How can we work together? I think a good example is a hackathon that we had last year after Phenome. A number of groups had some software that they all wanted to do some similar, but not exactly the same, some similar data extraction from a common type of software. And so we had a hackathon, and people sat together and they worked on kind of a common problem where it was addressing how to extract data, but each and every group that came had a different type of data and a different end use that they wanted to extract from it. There were certainly some commonalities, but that's the type of thing that I think we can facilitate, is the discussion around the best practices for data collection with say a platform of interest. As there are multiple platforms, kind of walking new users through the entry guide. So I think there's been some nice reviews recently on, what's the best type of greenhouse imaging software, greenhouse imaging camera systems. But, it goes, I think, a step beyond that to really look at all of the hardware that goes into this type of data collection that can be incredibly overwhelming, even if, say, a university gets a big grant. What's the best way to spend our money, and how do we do it cost effectively? That's where we really, I think, could have the most impact.
Okay, other questions, either in chat or if anybody wants to unmute. And I should also point out, Carolyn Lawrence put the link for the IPPS meeting in the chat window. So if anybody wants to learn a little bit more about that, and I think abstracts are due in about a little over in early July, I believe.
Yep. And that meeting will be in October 2nd through 5th. In Adelaide, Australia, which is a wonderful wine country. So I know that the organizers are working hard to get a really great list of speakers, which every year they're fantastic. So if you've always wanted to go to Australia, South Australia is a wonderful place to be.
Other comments? Any areas where you think NAPPN should go? You've got 3 of the board members here, so. Here's a question from Travis Rooney. Have y'all performed any studies within aerofarms using phenotyping? Could you discuss any of these? Very good question.
It is a great question. We're doing a ton of phenotyping. And so we have a collaboration with Dell Computers, or Dell Technology, I'm sorry. There's like 8 or 9 different Dell computing groups. But with Dell Technologies, they're kind of similar to like the IBM Watson, where they have hardware and software and kind of, modeling capabilities. And so we're partnering with them. There's a big showcase at Dell Technology World, which is like the equivalent of where Apple would announce their new iPhone. It's, the smaller Dell version of that same type of announcement. But that was just this last week. Michael Dell got up and introduced Technology World. And the first use case that he mentioned was aerofarms using IoT and phenotyping imaging to be able to improve yield and to enhance performance of these plants in this kind of unique growing environment. Yeah, so we're really excited. So, I can't speak to the details of exactly what we're doing. I will say we do have a couple of open positions if anybody's interested in getting more involved with that area. But we're always looking for scientists that have good experience with phenomics and phenotyping.
Okay, we got 2 more questions. The first one's from Ace. So for those that become regular members of NAPPN, what are some of the ways that a member can contribute to the organization?
Oh, that's a great question. So we're trying to line that out. So any suggestions that you have on that would be great. But contributing to the organization, at least right now, would be around organizing organizing conferences, helping with Phenome, helping with the International Plant Phenotyping Network Symposium, contributing and joining working groups within the IPPN. So there's low-cost phenotyping, there's an imaging working group, there's a root phenotyping working group, all of those kinds of technical involvements that, connect you with the kind of premier researchers in the areas. You can also help get involved by helping us generate funding. So if there, and that's the answer that nobody wants to hear, but kind of where we're at as a board right now. So we've got this RCN proposal that's in preparation right now. And, just any kind of ideas or resources or anything like that, maybe there's local commodity boards, like I said, the Iowa Corn Promotion Board and the Indiana Corn and Soybean Associations have been really great kind of perennial supporters of this type of work. So if there's other organizations local, that would be great.
So this is Carolyn. Can I make a quick comment on that topic? Can you hear me?
Very well.
Oh, good. Okay, so if you look at the NAPPN website, we have something that is an intranet where we're in the process of trying to form groups. We're calling them affinity groups, where people are already having groups of 4 or 5 or maybe even 10, I don't know, groups of people that you have a topic that fits under this umbrella, and you're already getting together and having just discussion groups on it. So if you already have one of those, and you would get back to April or to me or Seth, any of us, just to let us know that you're already doing it, how you're doing it, we would like to put your affinity group up on that website so that other people that are interested in that kind of area could connect with you. So that's a primary role for NAPPN, is to create these connections. And so if you have something going on that you think other people want to connect, we would love to work with you to create via NAPPN one of these affinity groups.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thank you, Carolyn. Yeah, and even if it's not up and running already, if you want to volunteer to kind of create or move ahead on something like that. So there is an existing hyperspectral group. Like I said, the working groups through the IPPN are a little bit more formalized. These would just be things that could be as simple as just like a journal club or a weekly or biweekly, a monthly presentation of a research topic.
Great. We got 2 more questions still. So Katie says, I'm based in Canada and interested to build relationships with the Canadian members. Also new to the NAPPN webpage, is there a way to know which organizations in Canada are members of NAPPN?
That's a great question. So we don't have a membership list because of confidentiality. But since the membership in the NAPPN is individual, so having each individual person can go and register and become a member. This is contrasted to our parent organization, the IPPN, which is an institution-based membership. So the IPPN, one of the founding members of the IPPN was Purdue University when I was there as director of Phenomics. When I left Purdue to come to AeroFarms, I was no longer a member of the IPPN because I left the host organization. And that was one of the big distinctions that we actually made between the 2 organizations, that we wanted to have individual membership. So I think that's something that I can bring to the board just to help people connect with each other a little bit better. Maybe we could have a message board or something like that. But for confidentiality purposes, we don't want to give out individual information. But we would certainly be happy to facilitate those kinds of discussions in a secure way. So I don't know, Carolyn or Seth, if either of you have any ideas about how better to do that.
So I have a comment on that, and that is that on other projects I've worked with that are similar to this, like you said, you don't want to give out someone's contact information if they don't want to. But we have this giant list of people that have joined. It would be possible for us to let people opt in to sharing their information. And so that is something that as a board we could discuss, and it would be a fairly simple thing to send out and ask people to opt in to sharing their area of specialization and contact information.
We could also have a members only, maybe make it a little bit more secure and talk through that. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So Argyle asks, can job descriptions of positions opened at AeroFarms be made available? Students, postdocs, and the consortiums I participate in would be very interested.
Sure, they're all on the website,
Great.
aeroforms.com.
So I've got a follow-up question. So you said you have jobs available. So one of the questions I've gotten from a couple students when, I start talking about phenomics is they ask me how I got involved in that and where I got training for that. So I guess since you're looking to employ people at AeroFarms, I mean, what are the areas of study? What are the ways to get into the area of phenomics?
That's a great question. Up until very recently, there really haven't been phenomics degree programs. It's been plant biologists that kind of dabble in engineering and data scientists who used to work in pharma and then transitioned over to genomics, and then now they saw a really interesting problem with drones and UAV flights to understand about crops. So, it's similar here at AeroFarms, and it was when I was at DuPont Pioneer, I also had, the same kind of issue trying to find qualified candidates that had not necessarily the right skill set, but the right mindset. So really, I've always, I think, stuck to this philosophy of hiring problem solvers, hiring people who are smart, who have some foundational training that is applicable, if not, directly the area that I'm hiring for. So, a really smart plant breeder that engineered their own UAV to fly and take pictures over a crop, or an ecologist that did this, kind of a similar thing, that they wanted to count trees, and so they found a way to, tap into satellite data, something like that. So, people that really go after those types of problems and solve creatively, especially across disciplines, is really attractive to this type of industry, where you just never know exactly what you're going to be doing on a day-to-day basis. It's always it's a little bit it's a little rough, and it's really an exciting kind of rough. So yeah, great question.
Okay, I don't have any other questions in the chat box. We'll open it up one last time for any oral questions. If not, April, I think you're probably not too hard to get a hold of. You've got a LinkedIn site. Your email address is all over the place. So if you have any questions for April or have any thoughts on how NAPPN can deliver value to science, to the community, or to your scientific societies or your career, please let us know. Any other comments, April?
No, thank you guys for the great questions and for attending. I appreciate it. Everybody, please go and join.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for attending, and we'll see you next month when Larry York will be presenting on some of his work from the Nobel Institute. Have a great day. Bye. Thanks, April.
Bye.